So anyway, I opened into a cloud with line twists. Data analytics company focused on the cannabis space. I don't know that there's any other facet of my life where I have attempted something hundreds of times and failed. I think the most motivation in skating these days is seeing the friends I grew up skating with.
Welcome back to Drawing New Stories Season 6, Episode 4, the only podcast where the interviews are reimagined into illustrations. Now in this episode we have Ryan Herron, the other side of Skatewives. And we had Emily, the Skatewife, on the podcast a few episodes ago. And Ryan gives us his perspective of their lifestyle and account and all that sort of stuff. But what I found most interesting about Ryan is that he loves all these really adrenaline-filled sports, skydiving, cliff jumping or bridge jumping, and also skateboarding as well. But he really is calculated on his approach to these things, and I was expecting a bit more of an adrenaline junkie. That's my thought of people that might do this. I'm totally wrong, obviously, but that was my perceived notion. So we had this great conversation with Ryan. He's super chill dude, talks about how he's able to work and live in a van, or why they were traveling around America and hitting up all these different skate spots and skydiving in all these different places, and the trials and tribulations that came with skydiving in different places with people you don't know. It was really, really interesting stuff that I would never have thought of or seen on that. But then you see someone diving off cliffs and you're like, oh man, that's crazy. What do they know down the bottom? But he's calculated. He gets down there and he swims around to make sure that it's fine. And then the calculations for skydiving, and he talks about stuff that has happened when he's had twisted parachutes and stuff like that. So I wanted to show off these three parts, but show that it's also still calculated, not just like a free-for-all. But anyway, let's let Ryan tell these stories and let's jump into it. Boosh!
There'll be a few of those. So you're just mentioning before that you're jumping into living in a house that stays still. How's the transition like that happening? Do you get are your feet ready to settle? Are you oh God, I'm glad to be in the home? Or how's it for you?
Yeah, I would say I very much enjoy the road, and having been on the road for so long, there are definitely things that stable life or not living in a van, that there's things that come with that I think I started to long for a little bit more, kind of the equation tips. And now, having been in a life not on wheels for a couple months now, and now I definitely am itching to get back on the road. but I think
you get 3 months and you're like, sorry, we're going back on the road.
Exactly. I just like, the constant change of scenery is really nice.
Yeah.
We were able to visit all these different places across the country, and specifically visit them at the best time of the year. So, for example, we went to Savannah, Georgia in October. It's beautiful in October.
Yeah.
I hear you don't really want to be there in the summer, but we wouldn't know.
Yeah.
And so, Portland, Oregon, we went through in July.
You're just near us up in Seattle.
Yeah, exactly. And Seattle, same thing. I think we were up there in June or July. We spent about 2 weeks on the Olympic Peninsula in late May, early June of 2023, and it's stunning.
It is. Yeah.
So
I feel like Seattle was one of those places where everybody kind of misses. Even my Australian friends, when they come through, they're like, we're going to go all these other places. We're not going to come to Seattle.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's fair enough. I'll go and visit you somewhere else anyway.
Seattle's a beautiful city. I moved to San Francisco in 2015 and had never lived in or really experienced a city that I think has its own view. I've seen a view in nature. You climb up a mountain and you look at other mountains, but on the East Coast, I feel like we don't really have cities where you can climb up a mountain or a hill within the city and see a view of the city. And so San Francisco was really cool to have that. And then I visited Seattle for the first time not that long ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And same kind of thing. Very, very hilly. There's a lot of beauty within vistas inside the city, which I think is really neat.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. Sometimes, I think the biggest part for Seattle is that it's grey so much. So, and the last 2 winters have been quite surprising. Like, just to the right of me, you can see the sun's coming through. Normally, not like that. And so I think people get down about that. So then the city, they get down about a little bit more because you don't get to see it. So you drive over a little hill where I am. It's called 85th. Come down that. And you can see the Olympic peninsulas like across there. And when it's out, you're like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. You smile on your face. You're like, this is killing it. For 3 months of the year, you'll be driving there and be like, oh, this fucking road. Oh, there's always traffic. But as soon as you see that, boom, you're happy. So, yeah, the grey clouds ruin it for it. But there's hardly any wind here, so that makes a big difference.
Oh, that's interesting. I did not know that. Interesting.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite pieces about it, to be honest.
Yeah, that's the wind. I'd say ever since growing my hair out long, windy days mean a totally different thing for me.
So where I grew up is in, from 14 onwards, and especially when I became a skateboarder, is Western Australian Perth, and it's like the second windiest place in the world, but it's consistently windy, and so it still gets really strong winds. But some days you'd go out skating and you'd go do like a 360 flip over a hip, and you go whoop, and your board like moves like a foot that way. And you're like, it's so frustrating. Or you're pushing against the wind to get that speed. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. There's a spot in San Francisco, 3rd and Army.
Yep.
And that one, at certain times of the year in particular, unless you go there early in the morning, you are pushing into the wind in one direction at least the whole time you're trying to skate it.
It's so, for me, I think it's growing up in that I have just a disdain for the wind. I got friends that kiteboard and love it, and I'm like, that is like, I just can't imagine those two things meshing together. Like, just annoying.
Yep.
So, with do you still own the camper van?
We do at the moment. We are actively trying to sell it.
Oh, you are? I didn't know if you were going to be like, hey, that's going to be our like weekend getaway and stuff like that.
In an ideal world, it is, and I think we will try to find a new vehicle for that in the near future. But the priority right now is getting a regular car.
Yeah.
And so, game plan is to sell the van and then get the regular car.
Oh, cool. All right. But what type of car would you get if you had your dream, like, in this scenario?
I've owned this van. This van's a 2008. Before that, I owned a 1999 Dodge Ram van.
Okay.
And before that, I owned a 2001 Saab. And so I have never had a car that's modern. The van right now has a rear camera, but that's the most modern feature, more or less.
Yeah.
And so I have a tough time answering the dream car question because I am totally just, all the technology of the last 15 years for cars is brand new to me. And so get me in anything that's going to get me point A to point B, and I will be happy.
Oh, God. I love that concept of just being stoked. Actually, I don't really care about cars. I do have a Tesla, and I do love the space age. Mind you, fuck Elon Musk. I'm putting that out there for everyone. Like, I have a Tesla, but I'm not like down that rabbit hole. But it's just so like fun to drive. I feel like I'm driving in the future. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty wild.
I've driven them a handful of times. My wife's family has a Tesla, and so we've borrowed that on occasion.
Yeah.
And getting used to the regenerative braking where you never use the brake, you just take your foot off the gas.
Yeah.
That's something to get used to. I've run into where I'm a stickler. I've just come into problems with them that I think if you're the owner of the Tesla, you figure out pretty quickly. But they twist the knife at me. And it's just things that like we've figured out. I got locked out of it once because I think I had the key on my phone, but I didn't have a physical key, and the car wasn't unlocking. And so we need to call somebody to unlock it remotely. And I'm like, we solved this so long ago. We invented keys like hundreds of years ago, and they've been working.
Yeah.
But
I would say I forget my phone. I forget my wallet all the time, like because of that now. Like, because I just walk in and be like, I don't need anything. And now my watch can open it. So I'm sure I'm going to forget my phone and be like, oh, no, I'm great. Like, it's actually a great thing because when I get to the car sometimes, and I'll be like, wait, oh no, I've left my wallet in the store. I left my phone in the store, sorry. So I'll go get it. Now I'm just going to get in there and drive away, and because it'll be on my watch. So
Yep.
I don't know. The benefits of living in a first world country. In that, anyway. Do you want to jump into the questions?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. Early bird or night owl?
Oh, I much more aspire to be the early bird, and I think I get it ebbs and flows. I'll get weeks or maybe a month there where I'm the early bird for a bit, and then I fall off and make up that time being a night owl. So I'd prefer to be an early bird, but I think I oscillate between the two.
I've never heard anyone that says they oscillate between the two. Like, I'll say this, when you go between the two, are you like wake up in the morning, you're like, let's get the day going? Or are you like waking up like I do and I'm like, oh God. And then at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, let's keep going.
I would say that when I do get up early in the morning, it's because I'm revved up and ready to get the day going.
Yep.
And, I'll string together a couple weeks of that maybe, and then eventually, I stay up too late working on something one night, and that means I'm not going to get up early in the morning the next day, and so it shifts the cycle.
Yeah.
And so then I play the night owl game for a week or so and get reoriented. But I'm struggling to find the right kind of in between balance. I kind of go back and forth more than I should.
What gets you excited to get up early in the morning? Like when it shifts that way?
Yeah, I think it's having a clear plan that I am excited about. If I wake up and I know exactly which steps I need to do, whatever the thing I'm trying to do is, and I just need to get up and go, and it's all laid out for me, very, very motivating for me. If I know it's much more unclear, the degree to which it's more unclear means it's a degree harder for me to get up and get at them.
Yep. Do you prefer to skate in the mornings or in the evenings or afternoons or whenever? That's
a good question. It kind of depends on what I'm trying to do in skating on a given day.
Oh,
so
okay.
If it's if I just want to skate a park and I'm looking for it more for a particular trick I'm working on, or there's a trick that I have on my mind on that I want to go do, and it's less for kind of the social aspect of skating, then I want to get at the park in the morning when nobody's there and just be alone in my own space. Then there's street stuff, and if I have a specific trick at a specific street spot that I'd like to do, it kind of depends on what that is. If it's a school, there's different hours. If it's a church, there's different hours. If it's a business, there's different hours. So kind of that's more case by case. And then, if it's just kind of I've had a long day and I need to relax or ease my mind a bit, then that's what the evening's for. So it depends. But these days I'm not really doing 2-a-days, for example. I'm not skating in the morning and then also skating at night, at least not often.
How old are you now?
I'm 31.
Oh God. When I remember at 31 thinking like, oh man, this is fantastic. I'm killing it. Mind you, at 31, I was not as good a skater as what you are. But I remember being like, I'm going to be able to keep doing this forever. But where I'm from, where I'm living, the skate park just down the road from me is really shitty. But then it's also winter for so long here where then the indoor parks are packed because there's only 2 of them at the time, and they're like packed and they're all slick, and I'm like, it's so hard. And then like going skating a underground car park and getting kicked out at like 33, and I'm like, okay, I'm solo doing this and skating a manual pad. Like the skate culture around here just wasn't, especially I'm in like a real suburbs area. So everybody around me, there was only one other dad that I've ever met that skates around here, and we super bonded, and now he lives in Boston. So we like still text about skating, but we don't ever like get to skate obviously anymore.
Yeah, I think I think what gives me the most motivation in skating these days is seeing the friends I grew up skating with still skating.
Yeah.
I think there's pros and whatnot, but it's the people around you that you're skating with. Because what you just said there, I have a similar, group chat with friends of mine who I haven't lived in the same city as them in almost a decade, and I would say that's what gets me most fired up to skate is when different people in there are sharing things that they've done. I've got a buddy who's just come off his second ACL surgery in his 30s, and he's learning new tricks. And it's just like that's way cooler than almost anything else I'm going to see, just knowing the background.
Well, also I think that sometimes when you get to the level and you're like, okay, the level of pros is growing, like the skill tricks, and you've got to like sort of keep in mind that like especially as you get older, you're sort of like, well, I found that I was like just maintaining tricks and maintaining, and then like tricks were dropping off. I'm like, well, I'm not getting that trick ever again. Never am I getting a nollie tray flip that I dreamed of. Or maybe I could if I went and practiced. But you get what I mean? Like there was, you sort of have to keep your eye on that sort of prize, and having your friends around that are in that same sort of ballpark, you can get stoked on them, but then still like they're getting amped on your progression because they know where you are. There's that sort of fire.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think Andrew Reynolds was on a podcast recently. I heard a clip of him saying, he's focused on what's hard today. And I like that. It's
great. Except for what's hard for him today is like a frontside flip down a like 12 stair that would make my knees blow out the top.
Which is still crazy. He could do that in his mid 40s, but
well, he just got a cover of a Thrasher magazine. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
That's wild.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy, the longevity. I mean, he was Skater of the Year in I think 98.
Yeah, I remember seeing him on Birdhouse when the end came out, and he does that, like he ollies down and does that stop right at the end of the stairs. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is the dude. I went and got a board, it had a chainsaw on it. Like the board broke like 2 weeks after having it, and I did a 180 and it broke. It was so expensive, and I was like, no. But I was like, I'm riding this guy out. Like he's so good. But back then, we all thought skateboarders like ran out at like 25.
I mean, I think they did more or less. You know? I was working on. I did a video with my wife. I don't know, a couple months ago, and was looking at like Skater of the Year over the years, and I graphed the age of Skater of the Year. Yeah, and it's gone up significantly as time has continued. Yeah.
So let's touch on that now. It doesn't really matter. You brought up, so your wife, and you have a channel / Instagram sort of YouTube called Skatewives, and I interviewed your wife last year. How has that changed your life? Like, because it's blowing up, right?
In the skateboarding context, it's been an interesting experience for sure. Yeah. I don't think it doesn't really trickle into non-skateboarding realms. At least not really. It came about. It was a product of us living in the van and doing van life. Yeah. And so we moved into this van, and Emily and I have been together for 8 years or so. Yep. And up until that point, she had, obviously she knew I skated, and that's what I'd spend a good chunk of my weekends doing. Yep. And weekdays, I'd go to the skate park and come home, and really all she would see was me come home sweaty and dirty, gross, bloody, and hopping in the shower. And that was skateboarding to her, right? And so sometimes I'd have friends come home and we'd look at footage we filmed that day and whatnot. Yeah. But that was skateboarding. And then all of a sudden we moved into this van, and I don't think either of us kind of thought about it ahead of time, but I had the realization of, if I want to skate now, the whole van kind of has to come too, because that's the only way to get to the skate park. Yeah. And so suddenly she found herself in the parking lot of the skate park all the time. And, that led me to saying, hey, can you give me give me 5 tries,
Yeah. One more. It's always the one more.
Exactly.
Always the like, hey, can you get this, just this angle over here? Like, just, no, you're too high up, just a little bit down.
Yeah, if you laid down, it would actually look a lot better.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I get that you don't want to lay there, so
Yeah.
maybe can you crouch?
Yeah.
Yeah, it and it actually did. It didn't really start from skate parks initially. My initial my initial train of thought was, I'm going to be driving around the country, and there's a ton of spots that I will encounter that I will probably never see or skate again, because I won't be back in these places.
Yep.
And I'd love to film a video part. I'm always kind of in the background trying to film a video part.
Yep.
And so I got the idea of, what if my wife just filmed every clip in a video part, and like, what would that look like? And so that's what initially we were doing, is I was only asking her to film it street stuff, and I kind of pick and choose the spots, right? She's never been kicked out of anywhere, and so I'm not going to bring her to a spot where we're going to get kicked out. We're not hopping fences into schoolyards.
You run away from your wife, and you're like, sorry, we're all for one for all for none.
Hey, she doesn't have a board, so it's a little more.
She wasn't even skating.
Exactly. So we did. We started doing that, and then it led to a couple. Hey, will we film this at the skate park? And she would kind of make fun of me just about the whole thing. And eventually, I told her, you should record some of these bits. Like they're fairly entertaining.
That's how I found it, because I was like, I saw it, and you get like some people like talking shit about skateboarders or whatever, and then she's like, I can't even remember. She's like, I'm sitting here reading this book, and now I'm like a filmer, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly how my wife would feel. Mm-hmm. And she was just making these quick little whips about it, and I was like, yep. And so that was pretty good. Yeah,
and I think we've been trying to balance. It's not. And different people will interpret it different ways, but it's not about making fun of skateboarding. I think it's poking, it's shedding light on some of the just stranger tendencies we have when you zoom out from,
when she notices you walking up the stairs and you're like, oh, like an alien hasn't figured out how to use stairs. I was like, that's exactly how my wife is. She is, and I never really did rails. I think I maybe hit one or two in the streets. Where I grew up, there was not really like any rails to sort of hit.
Yep.
And I still will walk upstairs, and I was like, I'll think of like a skater I know or a pro skater. I was like, they could probably do this trick on this rail. Mm-hmm. And like sort of like look at that, and she's like, what are you doing? Like, you're looking at this like you're like, what's rail? Like Zoolander and the TV or the computer or whatever it was.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love looking at the like, oh, there was wax here, or oh, it looks like this was wax, but maybe they sandblasted it, and it's just. I think for as crazy as my wife will look at me when I'm doing some of that, my in-laws as well, I think, have just been, and my parents, just what is going on?
Yeah, I feel like my mum and my stepdad, he's a old 80s skater surfer dude. And so, like, they fully get it. Like, we've had ramps in the backyard and stuff like that. But my in-laws are, like, so far removed from that. Like, the only skateboarding in life they might have seen in real life is me. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I remember them one time, even my in-laws, like my sister and brother-in-law, would go down the skate park, and I've been living here, like, maybe 7-8 years at that time. And I'm down there skating and doing some tricks. And at this point, like, my tricks are degrading. So I'm not even skating at my best, and they're like, oh my gosh, you're so good. And I'm like, they're like, we didn't know you'd be this good. And I was like, what? Like, not that I was worried about what they thought, but I was just like, that's a weird concept that you've known me for this long, but they just were never around it, because you're always, like you were saying, you're doing it off to the side with other people. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. Have you ever encountered the opposite, where you're probably in like a mini ramp or a half pipe, and non-skaters are confused as to why you're not flying in the air like Tony Hawk?
I do. I got that when I was younger, over in Western Australia skating, and like I'd be like, oh hey, yeah, come over and skate the ramp, or like would go somewhere and they'd be like, I'd do a demo, and I was more of a transition skater, street skater, and they'd be like, come on, do like a 540 or something like that, and I'd be like, yeah, you're like living in Western Australia. There's like maybe one person, Brett Margaritas, that might be able to do this.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, pump your brakes on this. You didn't even pay for this demo. You're good. All right, let's jump into some stuff. What do you do to pay the bills?
Oh, so I started my career in San Francisco right after I went to undergrad in Boston. Started my career in San Francisco doing sales for a software company.
Okay.
Then moved into like account management or customer success as they call it. So working with customers to use the product and then renewing it and all that sort of stuff. I did that for a while. Then I started a software company with a friend that I had met, and I was doing the sales and marketing and customer success stuff for that company. And so we were a data analytics company focused on the cannabis space. So our dispensaries were our customers for the most part, or are our customers for the most part.
Yeah.
And so I did that. We started that right at the beginning of 2020.
Yeah.
And so immediately had the pandemic come down in the third month of doing it, and so that was an interesting experience. Starting a business then.
Did the weed sales go up or down during the pandemic?
Right when San Francisco, we didn't have a ton of data at the time because we were just getting started. But the customers we did have in San Francisco, for the most part, we could see right when, and I don't remember all the specifics, if it was the governor shutting down the state or if it was the mayor shutting down the city, whatever it was, you could see a massive spike in cannabis sales right before like everyone knew lockdown was going to happen.
Oh yeah.
And then they were deemed a what was it? Not necessary business. Whatever the term we were all using for restaurants, an essential business. So they were all allowed to stay open.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, big spike in the data in terms of sales.
To be fair, the drug dealers that were going to be selling it out on the, what would you say, like not legally, they would be staying open as well. So
big time. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. My parents, when I grew up, they used to like sell and grow weed when I was a kid. So I've got a bunch of like weed growing. So I've got this affinity. Like I don't really smoke it. I sometimes take an edible here and there. But I've got this affinity for it. Like I think it's such a, like people that enjoy it, I'm like, yeah, enjoy it. Like that's cool. I've never had like an argument when someone's high. I've never had like anything that's been terrible when someone's high, and I've grown up around it. I've grown up a bunch of people drinking. I've always had a fight or something when I'm drinking. But when it comes to weed, I'm like, everyone's just chill. Like, why? Like, let's just all chill with this stuff. Even though I don't do it, but everyone's chill.
Yeah, so. Yeah. I think it leads to it seemingly has less downstream problems, or at least immediate ones, than other things available out there.
Yeah.
But
any bad decision I've ever made is through alcohol.
Yep.
Any bad decision eating food. Like when you do M&Ms and Skittles together, that's definitely when I've been high, and that's a terrible thing to do. That's like a definite sin.
Yeah, that's your teeth and your tongue will look all kinds of colors after that.
Oh yeah, just the taste, the texture.
Yep.
So, are you still working for that company now?
Yeah, so I did that. So started in got off the ground in 2020, and then I left that business full time. I left the day-to-day of it in kind of end of 2023 while we were in the van. So about the first year we were in the van, I was still working there just remotely, and then left the day-to-day while we were in the van, and that was several things weighed into that decision, but I was mostly ready to not sit behind a computer all the time. I was in San Francisco working on this business, sitting behind a computer for 2-3 years during the pandemic. Yeah. And, I was kind of looking at it like I'm 26 to 28, 29 during that time. I'm like, this is, I don't know how many good years I'm going to have left where I'm going to be able to skate the way I want to, or ride a snowboard the way I want to, or I had started skydiving as well during that time.
That's what you...
it was just, I kind of was like, I I don't know if I'm wasting this time, and I'm doing all this stuff that I know I should be doing to build a better future, but like when do I do the stuff that I want to do more so? And so that led to the van, and then it turned out I was just kind of still sitting behind a computer all day, but in the van, and I had moved from, not being able to do what I want because I'm sitting in San Francisco behind a desk to the exact same thing, except now I've parked the van right outside the spot I want to skate, but I'm still on the computer all day. And so stepped away from that in August, like end of 2023 in the van, and then since then I intentionally took a good chunk of time off, and then now we have been exploring whether the Skatewives stuff we've been doing on the internet is something that is viable and can make certainly not the income we had in tech careers. But something that is much more day-to-day what we want to be doing or what we have fun doing. It's been interesting working with my wife. And so we're teasing that out, and we're kind of in the throes of teasing that out. I think we're going to give ourselves probably till this summer to kind of make a go, no-go of, hey, let's just move this back to part-time and re-enter the workforce here. Or, maybe we can keep this up for a little bit longer, and it's a fun way to have a project together that doesn't move us backwards.
Do you ever, so I sometimes think of that stuff with the Nine Club. And so I remember when the Nine Club had like Gary V, or they've had like people that aren't in the skate world on, and then like everyone was like, well, he's not a skater, blah, blah. And I always feel bad because they got trapped in that bubble, even though they had the Nine Club experience, which I loved when there was the 5 of them. It felt like you were sitting in the room with them, sort of like just shooting the shit about skateboarding and just things around the world. And I always feel bad that they got sort of encased in the skate bubble, even though they had great personalities. It would have been great to see what Chris Roberts would say about like go and interview someone and have that sort of dry sense of humor, but not in the skate world, but seeing it from a skater's perspective. You know what I mean? And so with you guys, with the Skatewives, have you guys thought about ways that you can expand outside of the Skatewives, and how do you do that? Or like make like your own fake like a AA meeting for like wives that have got like skateboarders or surfers or like that like partner? Like,
that's what we're trying to figure out. I think I agree with you in terms of like the Nine Club example and getting not cornered into skateboarding, but that's where you started. That's where your audience is. That's where your fans are. That's what they're expecting. I think that the skateboarding world it's what I care about most. It's not the highest spend demographic. And so if you're going to want to get, sustainable income, where I'm kind of trying to figure out is, I don't want to be selling things to skateboarders, if that makes sense. Like I don't want to spin up a brand of decks to sell it to skateboarders.
There's enough deck companies, enough shoe companies, enough clothing companies. Like, I feel you on that.
Yeah, and I like. So what does that mean? It looks like doing ads from time to time. But again, I don't want to just sell out the audience we've built, who is there for skateboarding and there because of skateboarding. I don't want to use that to just then make money off of it.
Do you know what's funny though? Is that I think this is like a skateboarder's trait, because I struggle with the podcast and doing that stuff as well. Because I'm like, hey, anyone that's listening, like, I'm so grateful for your time. I don't want to, like, even if I was to like get an ad and put it on here, I almost want to say to the people, hey, this is an ad that's just going to help me keep doing this thing. Even though that might not help the ad, you know what I mean? But then you see all these other sports, all these other industries and everything like that, they all like grow so well because they're willing to do that sort of selling. Like even in the skateboard industry, the big people that get to do all like the Red Bulls, the McDonald's commercials, that all these, like Tony Hawk's done all those. You got Ishod Ware, who's like into modeling right now. Like Paul Rodriguez has done a bunch of like other commercials. D-Deck, did the cologne?
Yeah.
So that, like the Lynx, or what do they call it here? Is it Axe here or is it Lynx?
Axe is definitely a brand. I'm not sure about Lynx.
Lynx is what we call it in Australia then.
Okay.
So like that, we were all really confused over there but they brand stuff differently. Maybe there was a brand over there called Axe already. But anyway, so I think of that, and I also think of like skateboarding, is that we're kind of like sometimes shouting into a void. We're like, everyone, you need, look at us, we're doing this. Where I don't know who's going to be able to do it, but every person that watches football or basketball may never have played basketball, may never have, but they're in for the culture. They're in for like the stuff. You got these old ladies cheering it on for football. They've never thrown a football in their life, but they're like in for it. So like skateboarding, as much as it doesn't need it, for it to have a strong enough industry, it needs to have these like outside viewers that are bringing money in and not just us churning stuff through again and again. So like if I see someone that's not a skater in a Thrasher shirt, or I see someone in Janowski's, even though the like Nike doesn't really need the money, but I'm like, yes, like someone outside of the skate world has got a pair of Janowski's on. That means that even though they don't care, they've like bought into the culture a little bit. You know what I mean? Like they've supported it.
Yeah, I think that's where one of the most pressing conversations almost needs to happen within skateboarding is to what degree do we right now need to sell the culture a little bit to sustain an industry.
Yeah.
You know, you're kind of seeing a lot of, obviously the core shoe companies are all kind of going out of business, and boards just kind of seem to be a little bit whack-a-mole. You know, somebody pops up with a brand, it lasts 2 or 3 years, and then there's the next one.
But that's always been the case, because you think of all like Pop War, a bunch of brands that sort of popped up, like what is it? I can't remember. It had this beautiful butterfly graphic. Anyway, there's a bunch of, but they were always sitting under other brands. You know what I mean? Oh, we're going to start this one and see if that takes off. But that's always been a little bit the case. But now the problem is that everybody can go and do it. Like you could go start your own brand, and it's like, okay, great. 100 people that follow you have bought that skateboard, and then so.
Well, and it used to be kind of protected, especially on the board side, by the wood shops.
Yeah.
You know, the wood shops would be exclusive to a brand. Hey, we do Baker Boys, and we're not doing your boards.
Yeah.
And so those barriers have kind of gotten removed, and it, you know, I just think that to sustain the level of, or sustain the amount of pros that talent kind of demands, we are going to need to make concessions with what elements of the sport are we going to sell out a little bit to be able to get more money generated in the ecosystem to sustain it. And then, but I also think the other side of that argument is, well, is that what we should be doing, or should we just focus on the core cultural element of skating? And if people want to leave, they weren't cut out for it anyway, so to speak. And it's interesting.
I think of that as well. I try and think about it in sort of layers sometimes. Like, you have your street league sort of pros out there doing that stuff, and we need a way for them to sort of like pull in the outside people. You know what I mean? And even if it's just to view them, but if that's funneling money into them, and then they're like, oh, my brand's taking off, but we do stuff in the streets still. Like, I'm not a huge Nigel fan. Like, he's a great skateboarder. His style's not for me, but he's a great skateboarder. But he also is doing stuff at a contest, and then he goes in the streets and does his like crazy, insane tricks in the streets as well. Yep. So those people viewing that in the contest setting, they might be like, oh yeah, sweet. That's them. That's all I view. That's great. But then in the streets, or like the culture for actual skateboarders is in the street. The problem is, I think skateboarders would be like, oh, he's just a contest skateboarder. He's just this. And I'm like, no, you need to like love that and love this. Yeah. And then be like, that's like, you sort of have to go, that might be bringing in the money. This is our core culture here. You know?
Did you ever watch the Push documentaries that I think
yeah.
the Barracks was behind it?
Yeah.
I'd almost wonder. I think those are probably almost 10 years old at this point.
Yeah.
I would wonder if there is an appetite at this point for something similar to that, where it kind of intended for a broader audience to contextualize a bit better what a street part is, because I think in seeing it kind of firsthand through my wife's eyes of filming one, there's way more that goes into it, right? And there's a lot that we inherently understand because we've been close to it and we've been skating for a long time. But seeing her realize firsthand, there's this trick I can do in a skate park every single time, but now that I'm trying to do it on this curb right here, and there's this crack that looks completely inconsequential, but it means I have to take a different angle, and it makes the trick 10 times harder, but it doesn't look any harder.
Yeah.
And seeing her kind of come to the realization of that, there's a bigger story you can tell about street skateboarding.
Yeah.
That, it's just, if you could make it better understood to the masses, I would wonder if that, I would wonder how that sits.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, the counter argument to that is, well, that's for the people who are in the know, who put in the time to get in the know of that. And I don't know. I don't know where.
But I even think the nuances of the tricks, like where everybody argues about like whether can you do a regular nose grind on a round pole, like or when you go over, people are like you can't do an overcrook on a round pole, and to me, I'm like if we should be calling that an overcrook because if someone is able to do a straight nose grind down that pole, they should be credited, and that should be hard. You get what I mean? Because it's harder.
So you're saying the straight nose grind on a round bar would be harder
down down a set of stairs, and then they should be able to be credited when that does happen in a perfect way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it would make front nose grind on a round rail like the most rarest trick you could find at that point. I was planning to do a video on this at one point and kind of scrapped it, but I had found a video of Cole Wilson doing a back nose grind on a flat bar, like a round flat bar.
Yeah.
Super straight on back nose grind, held it for 20 feet. It is unequivocally a backside nose grind. It is not a crook. It's not really an overcrook. I don't know. That being said, I'm a nose grind purist.
Yeah, I'm feel you. Like I understand why we say it, but I always feel for the person that is going to do it and be like, they'll be like, oh, there's a front nose on down a round rail, and I'm like, yeah, but if it's straight, like
and you're trying to do it, super straight,
then you nailed it. You know,
I've always thought. I mean, trick names are an interesting kind of cross section between historically how things got put together.
Oh yeah,
like fakie tricks, for example, and the odd naming convention there's a good chunk of that's just caused because there was no nose of the board back when fakie tricks were invented. So it was just straight up backwards. And then there's all kinds of rabbit holes about that, and then how video games have changed it, and it's interesting.
And then other cultures having influence on it. Like you have people that do alley-oops in surfing, and their alley-oop looks different in surfing, but then someone might be a good surfer in a different town and they'll be like, that's an alley-oop. And when they transition to skateboarding and then they say it differently in that town, it's very interesting. Or bike riders using caballeros for their tricks in going fakie and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. You're using it the way that they're meant to, but people they shouldn't use that, and then they do a trick that's similar, and then skateboarders pick that up. I learned last season in snowboarding that anything switch frontside is called cab on a snowboard. Really?
So if you do a switch front 3, it's a cab 3. And I was so confused reading
because
comments.
You're not pulling off your
no, it has
foot.
nothing. It has nothing to do with
it's
your
just
nose,
you're
your
going
tail.
switch.
Just switch frontside, and then switch backside is switch backside. It's
That's
how they
wild.
named their tricks, I guess.
Yeah. See, like that there. Like, if someone went from snowboarding, if you had a Sean White who was killing it, and was like, oh yeah, I just did a switch cab 540, and we'll be like, oh, so you did a fakey cab 540, whatever, bigger cab or whatever you want to call it. And then he's like doing it switching it. You'd be like confused, you know what I mean? Especially with someone with that level of audience.
Yep.
Yeah. That is very interesting. That's crazy. A bit like all those little nuances are really hard for like even my wife who's been in skateboarding, but I do wonder how like if in the big layer, when they have their commentators, they should have, hey, tune into this channel or like click this one for the intro channel for learn how to listen to this skateboarding or what they're doing. Have your mediocre channel for the kids, and we're not being quite crude in that. Then you have like the adult core skaters, and like they're like ripping stuff, they're referencing old stuff, they're like doing stuff where it's like maybe pulling the piss a little bit because they know that person, and so you're as a core skater getting this, but everyone's doing that, and that way. What normally happens, you got Chris Cole or you got Jeff Rowley trying to like, that was a front nose grind, nollie nose grind, and you have to come off the front, and you're like, God, listen to these two that know everything. But if you heard them at the core going like, oh yeah, I remember when Tom Penny did this one over the rail down here, and that was crazy. Like maybe someone with a bit more character as well. Like I don't know, the guy off Skate Line.
I think that's. Separating out the MCs, I think that would be a fantastic idea because it's the commentary that keeps most people engaged, especially if they don't skate themselves, and then if they do skate, it's kind of the commentary that keeps you there anyway. And I would, especially if you had like that's a really interesting idea. If you had like a core, the core scene announcer. Doesn't even need to acknowledge what tricks were done, right? All the skaters know the trick, and they know what's harder. You could just have a kind of totally different conversation inspired by the contest. That would be very interesting.
Yeah, and then like someone does tricks that are very similar, and why was one harder? And like, oh, but that guy, like, should he be rewarded because that's his go-to trick, even though it's harder for everybody else? Like when Shane O'Neill was doing the 360 double flip switch down. And like other people weren't doing that, but he got like a 9.9 or something like that. And but he had that trick on dial, even though it's a hard trick. Like, does he get rewarded for that, even though he's done it in a bunch of contests since then? I don't know. So it'd be fun to have that sort of argument, sort of back and forth, but like in the jest of skateboarding, like, oh hey, we're like sort of still padding out the culture on that one. You know what I mean? Like, oh, do you see him do that in the street? Like he's got this, or see that part.
Well, and it's interesting, too, where contests, in the streets, you wouldn't do, if you've got bigger flip front boards, you get one in your part. That's it. Maybe two. Whereas, like, in the contest, you go do that every single contest. It's like totally different rules. Whereas if I feel like there are some skaters out there who would, I did that last contest, so I'm going to try a different trick this contest. Even though that's not very conducive to winning, it's way more in the spirit of skating. And that would be, it's just kind of another layer to unpack as a broadcaster, I suppose.
Was that guy that was skating like Hoberman or something like that in the street leagues? And anyway, he was like skating at the parks really different. And he was so enjoyable to watch. Like, and I feel like that, it's kind of like why Tampa Am kind of still has that sort of energy where like people are rewarded for really trying to skate the parks differently. And then like best trick obviously is like bananas there, but that there's that energy about it still. And I wonder if like how you can pull people in to feel that energy for that.
Yeah. I think for me, the hardest thing in skateboarding is a manual. And so I think, and manuals don't really count at all in contests. It doesn't seem like. Super risky thing to try.
Yeah, one touch of the tail, done.
Yeah. And I think that would be fascinating to actually understand a better structure to reward something like that. It'd be interesting to have a contest where you're more almost need to demonstrate all areas of competency on ledges, rails, flip tricks, a manual.
Well, I know that. Far out now. What's his name? He used to ride for Red Bull, Cliche.
Joey Brzezinski?
Yes. So he had the manual competition.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it's so hard for the manual tricks because
They're boring to watch.
Yeah, they're boring because people aren't getting them. Like it's a frustrating sort of area to be in.
Yep.
So I don't know how they would get that more exciting. I do think because I've been to a bunch of street leagues. I do think in between they just need to fire out shirts all the time.
Really?
There's because you kind of sit there, you see them do a trick, and you're like, okay, but people get the energy up when stuff's being thrown out there.
Yeah.
And then because you got a lot of mums and dads there with their younger kids as well. And then you got growing adults going oh, come on, you see that? Oh, come on, that. Boo, that wasn't worth that score. And
is it a fun live experience? Do you get a good view and feel like you're in it?
Yeah, I always I've paid for both really high quality seats, and then it's really fun to do the high quality seats, and then but even the other ones that are not as high quality, you still get a pretty good view most of the places I've been. But the thing is when you're sort of a skate nerd and you're seeing the skaters, the pros walk by, and you're like, oh dang, he's taller than I am. Oh dang, he's way shorter. How's he getting that pop when he's doing that? You know what I mean? Your brain's sort of thinking like that. But it's a good experience. You're not gonna not have fun. Mm-hmm. And then seeing some of the tricks of because the camera never does it justice on how big something is or how fast something is. And I remember there was this one where Chris Joslin was going, did a fakie, a big gap fakie air on these two quarter pipes. And I was sitting next to a guy, and we'd traveled down there from Seattle to the LA one together. And he's he's not going to make that. It's too tight. And I was like, no, I think he's got it because he's going to bite that, just get it in this section. And he got it, and we all were standing out that's crazy, that's so fun. But you've seen the gap and all that, and close, you're oh, that it would not translate on camera because people think you're just a skateboarder. You can just stick it to your feet and do that.
Yep.
And so, I don't know. The in person was pretty bananas, pretty good. You should go. Where are you guys based now?
We're based in the Washington D.C. area. Northern Virginia.
Oh, yep. Yeah. Do they have any East Coast street leagues?
I think there's usually one in Newark, New Jersey.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Sometimes they come to Jacksonville, so we'll see. They haven't put out the schedule yet this year. It's a little late.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe with the stuff that Mike Moe's doing. Did you see that?
Yeah, I would wonder. Yeah, I wonder how that works because he's got Malto announcing that, and I'm surprised Malto doesn't have an exclusive contract with SLS. But
I think SLS stopped the exclusive contracts because it was too expensive to keep them there. That's why they can do X Games and stuff now because, again, our industry.
Yep.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. What's your favorite mythical creature?
Ooh. When you asked that, the first thing that came into my head was a centaur.
Oh, okay.
But I really couldn't articulate a reason why that came to my head first.
That's okay.
Yeah, I guess a centaur, but I'm not sure why.
Is the centaur the one with the half man, half bull?
Or half horse, I think, maybe?
Oh, okay. Centaur's the one, a man's body and then the horse legs?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't know where that came from, but I don't know. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about mythical creatures. I guess the other one would be a dragon because Game of Thrones made it look pretty fun to ride one of those. But
yeah. I put this stuff in there, questions like this, so then if someone doesn't have answers that I can draw from, then I'm I can draw from that. So it's sort of a cheat for me a little bit. What do you do to let off steam?
Most of the time go skate.
Oh, really? So that's your... I guess that was mine. I guess skateboarding, I don't know, it was sometimes more frustrating than it was letting off steam.
I guess the best way for me to let off steam is to maybe let it pass, perhaps, or let myself think about something else. And so if I can go skate, and it's not just skating, it's if I can get lost in a trick, which doesn't happen every time.
No.
I find that the more sessions I string together, the more days in a row I skate, the easier it is to find myself lost in a trick.
Yep.
But if I can get that, kind of get the tunnel vision and I don't know, the flow state, I guess
Yep.
some people will call it. If I can get into that, that is by far the best way for me to relax or to remove stress. So that's usually what I'll try first.
Yeah. What's the last trick that got you into the flow state, like that you're trying?
Ooh. Let's see. I was filming a street trick, let's see, 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago. And it was like a fast plant from this loading dock gap thing.
Yep.
It would be a little difficult to describe. It's like a loading dock where you gap over stairs.
Yep.
And sometimes there's like a handrail. You kind of go
Yep.
over the rail and over the stairs.
Yep. I think every skateboarder's tried to ollie one of those.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they're around.
Yeah.
And this one has like a ledge after, so you gap over the stairs, and then there's a ledge you have to clear. And so I was trying to fast plant onto that ledge. And anyway, I thought it was one, if I put it down 3 times, I will roll away from one of these.
Yeah.
I think I stuck it 25 times. Just stick, fall flat, forward. Splat, 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 splat.
Oh God, that's good commitment.
Well, yeah, after 5 of those, I'm kind of like, okay, this is getting ridiculous, but
Yeah.
I'm fully locked in here.
Mm-hmm.
So that was probably the last one.
All right, sick. I always think of when like the skateboarders are trying like super gnarly tricks, and you see they're like just getting like slammed super hard. And they're like, oh yeah, I went back and had to try that 3 times, like 3 different. I'm like, I just can't imagine that now. Like I'm older and I'm like putting my body through that 3 different sessions. But when
Yep.
you're a kid, or when you're your age, but you're sort of like, all right, yeah, I still got that in me. I still got it in me. What-
I really don't want to have to go back. That
Yeah.
is, that's goal number 1.
Do you find that get up and try it again mentality has helped you out through your life?
Yeah, I think a lot.
Yep.
There are, I don't know that there's any other facet of my life where I have attempted something hundreds of times and failed every single time. And I think that the best experience I've had, one of the best feelings I've had in life is coming out the other side of that, failing at something literally 100, 200, 300 times, and then getting it is the feeling I want to be chasing in skateboarding and in just other things, as well. I've felt that some way working on spreadsheets for work, right? You get a formula to work the way you want it to, and after tinkering with it for a couple of hours, and it's a good feeling. So I think in work I've definitely applied it. In sales, especially at the beginning of my career, you're kind of doing a lot of actions and hoping that a very small % of those actions are successful, and then you work those. And the skateboarder mindset of just it's okay to fail, or it's okay if this doesn't work, is invaluable.
Yeah, I do. Really 2 things. The get up part that I just love about skateboarding, because it comes down to like the ratio of the tricks that you land versus the tricks that you've tried to get there. It might be 1 to 1,000, to be honest.
I have always wanted, you die and you go to your life statistician.
Yeah.
I would love to know what my actual
me
land
too.
rate is.
Yeah. I like to think about that as well, but also just in life of like the times you almost died but you didn't know
Yep,
it. Like
yep.
Something zooms past your head, or the amount like of misses you had versus makes it into the bin with a bit of trash or something.
Yep. I've always wondered, like, how close have I really gotten to a serial killer? What?
Oh yeah.
Was it a mile?
Like
Was
a
it
little
100
heat
feet?
map?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yep. But the skateboarding...
You find out that it's your wife. You're like, it was real close.
Yeah, no, the skateboarding questions I would ask, though, would be fascinating.
Yeah, so much. But then also the other thing that I think is really interesting is skateboarders always want progression, And it's not for the sake of progression. It's for the sake of like, I could try something else. I could add something to it. What can I do with that? And I found that that's what's hard for me is with skateboarding and getting older, is I don't have the skill set or my body can't do it. Like, I'm no Andrew Reynolds, so I'm not like adding to anything. I was just maintaining that. And so like, I'm not go out and go, oh, I'm going to try a 360, a nollie 360 flip to manual. You know what I mean? Because I just couldn't do it. I don't think. But back in the day, I'd be like, I think I could do that. And then maybe I could shove it out of that. And then, okay, so let me practice that. Okay, I got to shove it out. Maybe I could big spin it. Or like, you know what I mean? You're always adding. So that progression makes you want to like add and grow. So it's not just the get up. It's like, oh, I got up and I got to mediocre. You're like, get up and you're going to push that always just a little bit.
Yep.
And there's a fine balance between being self-critical and having self-growth. And I think that I sit on the self-critical side too much, but I think a lot of skateboarders who do well should be on the self-growth side.
Yeah, I went to at a skateboard conference actually over in France last fall. There was do you know the pro skater John Gardner, who's pro for Creature? No. He kind of left the pro skating world and is in school getting a master's, I think, in some kind of study, whatever study lets him be a therapist. And he's started, this big campaign and has a company where he's been going around and doing like psychology talks in some sense to skate shops and to kids and whatnot. And anyway, he did this presentation over at this skate conference talking about mental health and skating and things related. And one of the premises he talked about was the concept of self-harm versus perseverance. And as skateboarders, like, jumping down a stair set 100 times is going to look like self-harm to the vast majority of people. And for that skater, it might be self-harm at a certain point, but there's also, a certain point at which that person is just persevering through a trying time, being the trick. But anyway, it was just what you just said there really reminded me of that. It's interesting. There is a very fine line, and it's kind of a balance at some point. But it is really interesting that we all are so used to trying over and over and over and over again, and really expecting that it is going to eventually work.
Yeah. I think about that. I think about it with the podcast. I think about it with so many things. So I play a lot of pickleball now because I'm super old and uncool now.
Pickleball's fun. It's fun.
I know. It's super fun. I actually really enjoy it. But I treat it like skateboarding. So I'll pick a shot that I want to do, and I do a lot of spin shots. And so I sometimes sit at the back left corner, and I can spin it to the other back corner around the post and get it in like pretty consistently. And so that'll like, oh, hey, that's like my kickflip filler in the line. You know what I mean? Bang, got that. Oh, I really want to try this. And I'll be like, at the moment, I'm trying behind the back shots. So then people go, oh, he missed it. I get the behind the back and try and drop it into their like back end. Again, it's like triggering that sort of like trick shot in my mind. I will leave the pickleball court. I don't know how many games I've won or lost. I'll remember like, oh, I got that shot at the right angle that I wanted, or I got that shot like in this spin, or this like the way it landed. And I think it's the skateboard mentality of that.
Yep. It's tinkering with something for longer than most people are willing to tinker with a thing. That's a good chunk of it too. Is you make a lot of progress in 5 minutes messing around with something, because most people drop it after 3 tries.
Yeah.
I remember. Have you ever watched the Billy's Balls barracks thing that they did? It was with Billy Marks shooting the ping pong balls into a cup.
Oh yeah,
that was that had quite an impact on young high school Ryan. And so I made my own, ping pong trick shot video in the basement. And I remember showing somebody in high school, I was probably like 14 or 15, showing somebody, and they're like, oh, you must be so good. And I'm like, no, I missed it hundreds of times. I'm just showing you the only ones that
The
I
one
made.
that I made.
And it's like it wasn't that hard. It's not that as though, I mean, you do it more, you get a skill, but it's just I tried a lot of times. That's the only secret.
Yeah, that is really the secret, to try a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really good. I loved the barracks, to be honest. I know there's a lot of people that hate it. I absolutely loved it. Like, I loved the little things they would do, all that sort of stuff. I know it got a little bit mainstream, but when they were in the first like warehouse and it was gritty and it was just like skaters hanging out in there, you know what I mean?
I very much loved, I'd say 2008, 2009 to, I don't know, 2011, 2010 or 2012 barracks. I remember rushing home from school to see who the First Try Friday was. You know, I watched that a lot. After then, and part of that was I went to college at that point, but it definitely changed. But no, it had a huge impact.
Yeah, I feel like when they went to that big warehouse, which was fun because it was bigger and they had other stuff in there. But do you know who I thought was really good is, and this sounds like I'm being biased because I think he's going to be a guest later in the season or maybe next, Steezus.
Oh, yeah.
I loved him as a host.
Yeah.
I thought he was like cool. Like I didn't even know at the time if he could skate or not. He was just like vibing, and then like I was like, oh, he can actually skate, and so he knows what he's doing. And I was like, but he just had like a cool vibe, like, you know, going on through there. It's like he was sort of like the gap between just the warehouse and then the viewer. You know what I mean? And he was like, oh yeah, we're gonna get this done. We're gonna do that. So it was kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, he was on the 9 Club experience, right? For a while?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
same guy.
Yep. Do you watch the 9 Club much anymore?
I will watch when there's a name that I'm pretty interested in. I'll jump in, but I don't watch it regularly at this point. I used to. I would say like the 2017, 2018, because I was commuting a lot then. I would throw it on, but not as much anymore.
Yeah. I had it, but I got into it when it was in their like 30th episode, I think it was, maybe even closer to that. But I just smashed them because I was like, oh my gosh, like I've never seen anything where it's just like these raw little interviews going on.
Yeah, like the 4-hour Jamie Thomas story. I mean, that was amazing. He like homeless in San Francisco for a while. It was, right? That was really cool. Same with I think the first BAM one. Really long time ago, but I thought that one was great as well.
Yeah. I was stoked. So I'm gonna try and nerd out with you. Hang on. So I don't know if I was or not, but I did like a little sketch of them and was like, oh hey, here, this little sketch, and they were like stoked on it. And so I've got a shout out on the 9 Club a few times, which has been really rad. But remember the 9 Club experience? They had this like whole 9. They were talking about how good bathtubs were.
That's awesome.
So there's these 2 of these mugs, and it was the 9 tub experience. And so I did that, and they made mugs of it and stuff like that. So it was really cool. I've got to meet them. They're all really, really nice guys. I thought Chris was going to be a bit like cold, of like just like that dry humor. But when I met them all, they're all fantastic. I was meant to meet them for an hour. We ended up hanging out for like 4 or 5 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was incredible.
They were really rad. Did you go to the studio?
I did. Okay. I think I went and dropped off something one time, and then they said they gave me some shirts and stuff like that, which was terrible because I was like fat at the time, but I didn't like quite know that I was that fat. And I was like, oh, I'm larges, I'm great. Yeah. And then I got home and I was like super tight and all these larges. So I'm wearing these. And it's like, God dang it. So, but they're all rad dudes.
Yeah. No, they do a good job.
Yeah. If you could travel back in time, which period would you go to?
Ooh. Let's see. I would be... I guess if I were to pick something of like post-industrial revolution, I would be very curious. All right, I'm gonna put too many parameters on this. If I could go post-industrial revolution, and I get an escape rope, I'd be very curious to see what the American West was like then.
Oh God, couldn't be a worse place.
Right, that's why I need the escape rope.
Yeah, I feel like if you going to the toilet there, like just flies everywhere. Like, and flies are the worst. So I just feel like you're not escaping anything there. Like even if you're rich, you know what I mean? You're going out to the dunny and then you're going, oh great, this is just a shit house with just flies around it.
I just think it's, like watching the movie The Revenant, Leonardo DiCaprio, the one with him and the bear.
Just God.
Thinking about that, like people did that and what that must have been like. It's crazy, and I'd be very curious to observe it and then get out of there.
Yeah. I would love to go back to parts in there where there's like questions of what actually happened. You know what I mean? And go back and be like, I just want to see the truth.
Yeah,
that's all I want.
Yeah, camp out on Easter Island, or is it Easter Island? Or no, wherever Stonehenge is, camp out.
Oh yeah, and see how that was made. Yeah. That would be fun. Did you hear there was a earthquake in Area 51 today?
No, I didn't.
Or yesterday?
No.
And there's all these like, oh, the aliens are trying to escape, or they're trying to come pick up. Pretty funny.
Hey, who knows? There's a lot of secrets out there.
I would love it if there was, but I can't imagine that many people keeping aliens that good of a secret.
It would be that would be a tough one.
Yeah, just think about all the people around your house. Like, you can go tell someone a thing over here. That person's going to know in like 5 seconds.
Yep.
Yep. When's the last time you were surprised?
Oh, last time I was surprised. I have no idea.
You either got a really rad life or you got a really boring life.
I'm trying to think about how to interpret what my surprise is.
Oh.
Like, for example, as soon as you just said that, a text popped up on my computer screen from my wife. That surprised me. But that's probably not what you mean.
It could be as simple as that. These questions are meant to be more like conversation leading kind of thing. You don't have to have like a perfect answer.
Yeah. No,
Have you had any okay, let's adjust this.
Sure.
You mentioned that you skydive now.
Yep.
And I think your wife mentioned that she got it as a present for you, I think, and then you decided, I love this and I'm going to do that.
It had a little bit more lead up to it, I suppose. I was a springboard diver in college.
So the bridge jumping, that's where it comes from.
Exactly. So the bridge jumping and flipping, and I had seen right at the end of my college diving career, I had seen a video of this guy jumping off of a mountain doing, several flips in pike position. So like legs straight. He looks like a diver, but he's jumping off a mountain and doing these flips. And I was like, my college career just ended. I had just kind of mentally hung up this thing, more or less. And I saw that and was like, okay, what is this? Figured out that it was base jumping, which I had heard of but didn't really know anything about. And then saw that there's the guy was part of this base jumping school or something like that. And so I looked, I'm like, oh, there's school for this kind of thing. What is this? And then I see on there requirements to go to the school are minimum of 200 skydives. And so I kind of logged away, and I would have been 21. I kind of logged away, okay, I'm going to have to learn to skydive at some point, and didn't really think about it much again. And so Emily took me skydiving for my birthday. I think it was my 26th birthday. And so I had this in the back of my head, and we went up and did a tandem jump, and we spun a bunch. And I like flipping. I'm not big into spinning because it makes me a little bit queasy.
Oh, and like when you're on one of those gravitrons?
Exactly. It's mostly if I'm not in control of the spinning.
Yeah, me too.
And so we spun a bunch in free fall. We spun a bunch under canopy on purpose. And I landed, and I was like, that was really cool, but I'm nauseous. And so then about 9 months later, I did another tandem and told the guy, I don't want to spin. I'm trying to figure out if I like this or not. Came down from that one. I was good to go. So then I spent another year saving up money to get my license and buy a rig. And so I did that in from February to May 2021, was getting licensed. And then I've done about 130 jumps, which to a non-skydiver sounds like a very, very large number. To a skydiver, it's a very, very novice. Like I'm
Really?
Yeah, like I'm learning axle stalls on a mini ramp kind of.
No way.
Yep.
Far out.
So yeah, it's so that one's interesting to navigate, I guess. But I've been I was excited about going into the van and going to different drop zones, very similar to skateboarding, where you're skating different cities and going to different spots and meeting different people. And I had been excited to go to different drop zones around the country and see that. And, you know, I want to skate in every state. And so I was kind of like, well, what if I skydive in every state, and was tracking that. And I had a scary incident in, I won't say the drop zone name, but I had a scary incident at a drop zone where after I'd been kind of bouncing from place to place, you don't know the people that you're jumping with because you're meeting them right then. And jumping with safe or safely minded people is much safer than jumping with like people who can turn themselves into meat missiles or just don't make good decisions. Because you are moving pretty fast, and if you hit each other, it's not good. And so, you know, I realized like, I don't know who I'm jumping with, and I'm kind of just putting trust in a bunch of random people. I'm jumping in different environments, both weather-wise and like having to relearn a different map of where the landing zone is and how you fly your landing pattern and whatnot. So it's just like way too much new information every single time. And I had an incident where I ended up I opened inside of a cloud, which is like a huge no-no. And I opened with line twists. So it's like, skydiving debates whether that's a malfunction or not. You kind of just untwist them. But it can turn into a malfunction if you start like a docile canopy, and I fly a pretty docile canopy. You can open, you can have line twists, and it's still going to be stable and fly straight. You just need to untwist yourself. As you get like smaller into more high performance parachutes, when you get line twists, it's more likely to kind of knock it to one side or the other, and that'll make you start to spin. And if it starts spinning, you're not going to get that untwisted. You need to use your reserve. And I got the line twists undone pretty quickly and was actually kind of pleased with that. But then,
Hang on.
No, I had line
twists. Is that the first time you've had line
while
twists?
Getting licensed.
So the first
it
time
was
you had
surprising.
line twists, did you shit
it was
yourself?
something that so line twists it can be caused by careless packing, but most of the time it's caused by bad body position when you're deploying. You want to stay really symmetrical. And if you're not symmetrical, you'll end up putting more weight on one side or the other as the canopy's opening. And if you do that, it can cause you to start twisting around. And so getting line twists while you're learning is actually not terribly uncommon, because that's when your body position is going to be the worst. But you're flying such a huge docile thing that getting out of them is not terribly problematic.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the first time I had line twists in about 100 jumps. And so line twists in and of itself, not a huge deal. I got out of those quickly. But I was in a cloud. And like I said, that's a huge no-no. There's several decisions I should have made differently leading up to that day, from in the plane to before we took off to reading the weather on the ground. Like, I did several things wrong to end up in that situation. And the problem is I'm now flying in a cloud. You can't see anything. And so I don't know if I'm over the landing area. I know that there's power lines off one way and trees off one way. And all I can do is kind of just fly it out and hope that I come out of the cloud with enough time to react to land where I'm kind of supposed to. And it ended up, I got extraordinarily lucky, and I ended up leaving the cloud at like probably the perfect spot, and landed totally normal. But I looked back at that and was like, most of this is a function of me with not enough experience, traveling around to different drop zones in different environments with different people who I don't know what degree to trust them and their decision making, that led me to agreeing to be on a load that probably, a load is what we call like the flight. I probably shouldn't have gone up on that load. They were trying to squeeze in 2 tandem customers right in like a weather gap, right? It had been kind of bad weather, and that was going to be maybe the only jumpable spot of the day, and so they forced the plane to go up, right? And I don't know these people, so I don't know. I can't read their, where I got licensed and everything. I trust the gut calls they're making because I've been around them and I've seen how they make decisions. And this one, I don't know that. And then the group that I was jumping with on this one kind of had like a slapped together plan, and I don't really like to do that. I like to know specifically what it is. But again, I'm the new oddball out, and I kind of just went with things that I probably shouldn't have, or probably should have thought more about. And then that led to a bad skydive, which led to me being in a spot in the air over a cloud, which shouldn't have happened. And so it was just like, I looked at all of this and was like, okay, I need to stop doing this until I can dedicate more time to building up my skill set and doing it at a consistent place with consistent people. So I have not jumped in just about a year. And that was as we were kind of finishing out the last of the van trip. And so I am very antsy to get back in the air, probably in the next month or two. So, yes, I've seen that
Point
once.
Break, the movie? You know how there's always in these like movies, there's always one person that does all the stuff, but they're kind of like a nerd underneath. They do all the computer stuff, or they do all that stuff. That's you. So you're like you're the adrenaline guy. Like, I'm in here, I'm doing this stuff with you, but I also do Excel spreadsheets so well. So if anyone says, "Hey, there's this extreme XXX people doing robbing banks," I'm gonna know.
Oh, I hope it doesn't come to robbing a bank, but.
Well,
I've
if you can fly out of there or like something,
I've definitely gotten the adrenaline junkie label before, and what I like to tell people is like adrenaline is what you get when you mess up. You know, when you scare yourself and you're out of control, you get the adrenaline dump, and that's not what I'm seeking. I am seeking to put everything together and do it all right so that I can execute to plan, and not get. There's rewarding feelings, right? It's very similar to breaking through on a trick on Try 100. That's what I seek out. And sometimes there's more things that the process is just bigger. It's the same with like cliff jumping, for example. You know,
I like both of those things. I'm like, fuck that.
Oh, you should definitely.
Maybe I do skydiving and do it once just to say I did it, but the jumping off a cliff into water and like I'm just like, that. It just seems like.
Yep, that's the one that scares me the most.
Problems can happen,
and will probably be the first one of all the things I do like that. That's probably the first one I drop because it's by far the highest impact on your body.
Yeah. That photo though of you and your wife jumping off. Your wedding photos.
I'm pleased with how that
so
came out.
Cool.
I'm still surprised she agreed to do that, but. Yeah, it came out well.
Well, if I was her parents, I'd be like, "Fucking Ryan's having a bad impression on her. She's now getting into skateboarding. I've seen the clips, and I'm like,
I'm certainly worried about it. Yep,
good luck,
and left the corporate world for a bit as well. So yeah, we're walking out on the limb. Got to balance it out.
Good, that's funny. Yeah, but it's fun.
I can do a handstand. I can't hold it for an unlimited amount of time like a lot of gymnasts or divers can. But
I was thinking that you might be able to. I was
no,
like,
and
this
unfortunately
person,
now
if anyone's gonna
my
be able to do it,
wrists
you might
from
be.
the beating of skateboarding, it's just I can do it, but it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I've got like something in here, which didn't happen from skateboarding. It actually happened from I was playing soccer and I was the goalie and I was being like super smart and fun and I was pretending to be a ninja or doing karate and I went, hey, yeah, and it just went, and then it's just been tweaked ever since.
I've got the lump as well. I've been told it's a cyst.
And so
it's like I think it's called a Bible cyst because they used to whack it with a Bible to get rid of them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And so I've been to the doctor and he was like, it's not bad enough for you to do anything about it yet.
Yep.
But I'm like, I can't do a push-up to save my life. Like, I can't bend it past there without it hurting. So, and there's sometimes where I've felt it snowboarding and I've heard it pop. And I've been like, oh my gosh. And like
I go through the same thing. I'll fall. I'll get a good fall in it. And then the next 2 months, anytime I just a little bit. And I'm trying to use the windows of good wrist periods. I really want to learn inverts. And I've never done one, but I can only try them like 4 or 5 times a year because my wrist doesn't work most of the other time.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's such a skateboarder thing to do as well. Like, I can only do it in this window because I've popped my wrist because I haven't gone to the doctor to get this sorted out properly. Yeah. Where's the last place you traveled to?
We went down to the U.S. Virgin Islands for a friend's wedding at the end of January. So pretty recent. My wife was the officiant of the wedding. The groom officiated my wedding. So it was a good time. I was not. I was supposed to take a picture of my wife marrying the couple, and I took a subpar one, but I got it. That was my role.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. There we go.
Oh yeah,
that's nice. At least is that nice and warm
80
down there?
degrees pretty much every day. It was beautiful.
Oh, good. Yeah, I haven't been down to that side of the country yet. Like,
really? It's
like Florida or anywhere.
It's nice.
Down
I mean,
there,
Puerto Rico.
So,
Puerto Rico is a great winter skate trip. Oh yeah.
Oh really? So my neighbor, she's like this super successful CEO of some massive international company. Amazing. She's from Puerto Rico, so they go there quite a bit. And I'm always like, man, we should get there. Like, that'd be super fun.
There's a couple DIY parks. There's a few skate parks. There's decent street spots. And if you can time it where it's like kind of off season a little bit down there, but also winter where you are, it's a good destination.
Yep. Yeah. I have to get over it. We're going to Hawaii, but that's mainly so I can go surfing. I really just, like, if I could just sit at a surf break this point and just it's consistent small waves.
Do you ride a longboard or
I would just sit there
surfboard?
and do that all day. I'm fat, old, and not surf fit, so I ride a longboard. But back in the day, I was still a shit surfer, but I enjoyed it so much. But I would say this. I'm a skateboarder at core, but I do love surfing. Like, so all I watch on YouTube, I never watch, or like on Instagram or whatever, I never watch any pickleball at all. Can't stand watching it. Skateboarding, surfing, or if it's snowboarding or BMX, something in that sort of world. But surfing and skateboarding are my two that I watch. Will be like skateboarding this much, surfing this much, and then filter down. But
I lived.
Have you ever surfed
in Capitola, which is right next to Santa Cruz, for about 3 months, and I had rented like this studio apartment that was right across from Capitola Beach, which is like there's a beginner break there. And so I got a board and a wetsuit and tried my hand at surfing, but I was able to go out, some days 2 or 3 times a day, because I could just look. I could walk outside, look and see how it's breaking, and then decide to go out. And it was great. I loved it. The problem was I got like such a good taste because I could walk outside and see what's going on, and then just put on my wetsuit and walk over, and then when I was done, walk back and use the wash off my feet, take my wetsuit off, and get right back on the computer and work. And then once that was, a 25-minute drive to, oh man, this isn't worth surfing anyway.
Yep.
And if I do decide to surf, then I've got to deal with the wet wetsuit, and I've got to deal with sand everywhere, and I've got to just the explosion of logistics. Yeah.
Oh, I think the same with snowboarding. I think that's why one of the reasons I love skateboarding so much is that, there's a little bit of weather dependent, but I can go find a curb that is under some small covering that I can just go and do little tricks on to get my little fix, you know what I mean? You can't just go out there and if the surf's flat, you're like, great, I paddled around. Or it's all ice up at the mountain, so I just
But
hurt my
I will say
tailbone
surfing, though,
45
is
minutes.
probably the most humbling sport I've ever tried. In terms of, it is just so hard. And especially when you're starting your fitness, your paddling level, it's like not only can I not read waves effectively because I haven't been doing it, but I barely have any energy in the tank, and I spend all that energy chasing terrible waves, and you just get nothing. But I'll tell you what, struggling for an hour saying the next wave I catch, I'm taking that one in, and it takes me an hour to catch it. As soon as you catch it, you paddle right back out. It's insane. Yep. It's the best feeling.
You got a wave. Yeah. One more until it's dark.
Yep.
Yeah, I've done that a million times. Yeah. What are 3 things you're grateful for?
I am very grateful for my relationship with my wife. I think that has we've explored so many different facets of life through our relationship. And I think moving into a van together right as we got married is an experience. And I think
that is definitely an experience.
It's been challenging, certainly, but I think we're both way better for it, and set up long term a lot better for it as well.
Oh yeah, that would have been just like a compound of how do we make this work? And now when you have space, you're like, those little things.
I'm grateful for my relative good health. I know we talked about wrist issues, and I've got something going. Yeah, exactly.
You just got to use. I
got something going on with my groin and hip, but exactly.
Well, that's because you're using the opposite hand.
But relatively speaking, I can do what I want to do. And I very much want to use the time now, knowing that I'm in good health now and not knowing what the future looks like, to do as much as I can, and also, not place all my bets for the future one way or the other, but try and hedge.
I was going to say, the one thing that I wish I did as a skateboarder is I wish I looked after my body better.
Okay.
So if it's like I've got a glass ankle now. And so, I can't... For me to kickflip, a regular kickflip, it's a lot of work, and I have to really think about it. It's really stretched. And so... But if I had gone to, a physio when I first rolled it, and, I had a car accident, sort of pulled it, but if I had looked after it, then I think I could still be skating pretty well now. And I do think about that when I'm younger. The skateboarder mentality of just push through it, rather than being you know what, let's work on this now. Maybe you're out for a month, but then when you're 43, you're going to be able to skate well and really
tried
enjoy
to
it.
Change my my mindset of paying for medical stuff and appointments like that, right? Depending on what insurance plan you have at certain points, that can cost a lot or a little. And I'm trying to move from being hesitant to pay for that because I, for whatever reason, feel like I shouldn't, or I can work through it, or I can find an alternative. But lately I've been telling myself, this is the whole point, right? This is the whole point. You've put yourself in a position to pay for things, is to be able to keep doing the stuff you want to do, which requires a healthy body. And so I've been trying to flip that script a little bit in my head and take better care of physical ailments. My relative good health would be number 2, and number 3, probably my friends. friends and family, but I've got a good network of friends that I'm very grateful to.
What percentage are skateboarders?
It depends. It depends how you'd want to cast a net. I would say, I don't know, 25% are skateboarders. It depends how. It'd almost be a better question for my wife because I think that there are, like, in skateboarding in particular, like where's the line between friend versus homie that you know? I guess to say that a better way, there are a lot of people that I have skated with a half dozen times or less that if I'm in that city or if I'm near them, like I will reach out, I'll hang out with them, we'll have a good time, but it's not someone I really keep in touch with, right? And to what degree is that a friend? I would probably describe them as a friend, but that's very different than, a friend that I have that I've went to college with and keep in contact with, every month or so, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how to break it down on a full percentage. I definitely think that I have always had one foot in the skate world and one foot pretty firmly outside of it. I did sports, like team sports in high school for the high school teams. I did college sports. I did the 9-to-5 job thing, right out of college for almost 10 years. And so, I just I have a lot of friendships that come from those worlds, and there aren't a lot of skaters in those worlds.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think it's hard because as you get older, even people that used to skate that love it, it stretches, it gets smaller and smaller. And so they might come back and get into skateboarding, and then now you're texting about skateboarding and stuff like that. But it's a hard sport that's hard on your body, to be honest. So like for people to like jump back in it or like maintain it, it starts shrinking down. So I always found that I had less friends that skated, and I had more friends outside of skateboarding. So I was isolated in my skateboarding, especially living here where I did. Like I'd go down the skate park, and at the time I was like 27, and I'd be 10 years older than the next kid, and I'd be like, well, am I going to go as a 27-year-old go skate with these kids at this underground spot because it's raining? Yeah, I am, but I'm going to feel really weird about it. But
no, I mentioned it earlier. I think I have like one group chat of people who I haven't lived in the same city as them in 10 years, and those are very close skate friends. We've a couple of us. There's three of us that have done a trip together, pretty much every year since 2015. I think we've missed maybe 1 year. So we just kind of pick a destination and go and then we try to play no skate parks as much as we can.
Oh, that's rad.
So that's been interesting as we've gotten older. Just street spots.
You try and play no skate parks? Oh, street spots. Oh, fuck, no. Good luck.
Yes, I've been
you've
a couple
been to Camp
times growing
Woodward,
up,
right?
And then we went, Emily and I went at the beginning of January, so about a month ago.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's like one of my, like, I
no,
really want to
so
go to the adult camp.
We just went to an open weekend
right?
that they had, but we were going back for adult camp in August. And I think there's also one at Woodward West. I'm not sure what the dates are.
Yeah, I want to go.
Yep.
You got to go for the one it's Pennsylvania, right? You got to go to that one. I would have gone this year, but I'm in Mexico for my sister's 50th. My sister-in-law's 50th. And so at the time, it just doesn't work, and I'm like, dang it. So I'm hoping maybe next year.
They should. I think for
that I can go.
There's got to be a lot of people in this camp that are still skating and finally ready to make the trek.
I just want to check. I want to check that off my list because I had this old Camp Woodward VHS tape, and Andy Mack
I don't know
was
the
cruising
tape,
around
but
the park.
I could
Do you
picture
remember
Andy
that
Mack
one?
at Woodward. That's funny.
Yeah, it's like he's cruising around. So he hits all the parks up back when it was a bit smaller, And I was like, that is amazing. And so,
Okay.
like, that's the checklist for me. And Tampa, I want like just
That'd
seeing
be a cool one.
all the Tampa stuff. I want to go down
Yeah,
there. And check
have
that
you been
out
to that park
and see the
outside of the
Tampa
contest?
Pro. That would be
Yep.
it.
Got it.
No, I've never been down there, so I have no idea. But,
Yep.
we did 3 gratefuls. Before I ask the last question, I did want to ask. Probably, I hate this question, but I feel like I need to ask it. What's your favorite skate trick?
I would probably say front blunts right now. Yeah. Front Smith
Ooh.
sometimes, but recently it's been more front blunts, both on ledges and rails. I feel like it's I've figured it out, and it feels good, and I can do it relatively confidently, and so it's what I enjoy.
Yeah. I have never done a front blunt, other than like little small ledges. But there was this one time where, I was back. When is it? This is like 1997. This is how fucking old I am. And so we only had VHS tapes and magazines, and I live in Western Australia,
Okay.
and then I live an hour south from Perth.
Yeah.
So that's the main capital city. So I'm in like Podunk town, like 60,000
Perth
people.
is pretty
in,
much
like,
the only city out
a
that way, right?
huge area,
Yep.
right? Yep. It's the most isolated capital city in the world. Like the next major city, like is Sydney is 5 hours away, and then you go the other direction, and it's like Africa, and that's like 12 hours away, by flight. So I'm all the way down. So you don't get that much information. You're going to go. Yeah, the closest skate shop was an hour and 20-minute bus ride, and then you had to come back, and you wouldn't even be able to watch your tape. Then you have to get home to watch your tape. So I was skating this rail, and I was like, "Oh!" I go to my friend. I just learned a new trick. It's called a transfer tail slide, and he goes, "Show me." So it's a little rail. It's not super big. Like it's only like a little like this big, and I get it, and I tail slide the whole way across, but my tail's not quite flat. It's sort of up, and I was like, "I'm working on getting it flatter." It's not. And he goes, "Do you know what trick that is?" And I was like, "No, like a front side tail slide. I'm transferring over to the other side." And he goes, "That's a blunt slide." So I always think of that when everyone says like I'm doing these blunt slides, because I had no idea. I could not do blunt slides any other time than that. Like I've tried them on like obviously on little curbs and stuff like that. You can go and like do that, but it doesn't really count. I'm no like ball gun Gary doing all the like curb stuff like that. I can't do that. But I like on ledge and stuff. My brain just wouldn't connect of like getting that. I was worried I'd slide out and like flip out. But yeah, that's my one and only blunt slide story. And this one little shitty rail in Mandurah.
I mean, that's interesting. It lends a lot more to like how tricks would have been named, right? It's because you're describing what it is way more than naming the trick in a way, and then that kind of becomes the name. Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, it's crazy on even some tricks where you're like a K grind. Like, where did that officially come from? And I always thought it was like when you did it, it was because you like looked like a K. Like that's what we thought back then.
Uh-huh.
And so
Yeah,
it was like cost and grind
crooked
and all
too.
that.
Well, it's like you could spell crooked with a K. Is that why it's called K grind? Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Exactly. Or even Ollie, like the fact that it's named off that dude, and then I'm like, that guy should be paid like a cent every time that's said. Like every time that guy.
It was like
if we didn't have
Ollie
him,
is like a real
skateboarding's not the
nickname
same.
for people, I believe, or at least it once was. Maybe not anymore.
That was his name was
Uh-huh.
Ollie Guntfield or something like that. That actually invented the trick. And so you can have name as Ollie. Like I've got a few friends named Ollie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe if you guys have a kid, you can have Ollie as a kid.
Yeah.
You should just go all out and just call it kickflip. You know what I mean?
I wonder if that's been done.
Yeah. I'm there has to be someone like there's some person. there's always like, in a range of skaters, you always have like skaters different. Like you got the guy that's like really heavy into drugs that skates. You got the guy that like drinks a lot. You got the like you skate nerd, me that shit skater. Like you got all those people around, right? And there's always that person that's just off the kilter, like they're quite on the drugs and they'll come up with something crazy. They're a really good skateboarder, but it's because like they're like there's a loose
first name Buttery, middle
that's
name
the person that's going to name their kid Kickflip. yeah. That would be it. Buttery. That is funny. All right. Last question, and then I can get out of your hair. In a couple of weeks, I'll get you a drawing. This question I've been deciding whether to change. So I'm going to hit you with 2 questions, and then you let me know if I should keep the old one and change it to the new one. Okay? The old one is, you have to wear a shirt with a slogan on it for a year. What does it say? And the new one is, because this is about drawing, what would you want your drawing to be?
So is this the context of the second question? Am I answering that understanding your drawing style already? Am I answering that as specifically to your drawing or a general I don't know anything kind of answer?
Ooh. Oh, do you know what? I've never really even thought about it that way. I would say towards myself, sort of like if you're like, hey, you know what? I've got this picture of this trick that I would love to be like created by you, and I could be like, oh, you know what? That might be fun, and I put my own little like Matty Mitchell twist on it. You know what I mean?
Let's see. I would be curious to answer the second question. The first question, I like the first question. I would need way more time to think about it. Mostly because, well, one, it's pretty committing, right? You're wearing that on your shirt for a whole year. But 2, my knee jerk would just be to say something dumb to answer the question without thinking about it enough. So maybe I'll put that on the back burner. Let me see. The drawing. I have like we've talked about skateboarding, we've talked a little bit about skydiving, a little surfing, maybe some snowboarding as well. I think we mentioned cliff jumping at one point. I am. Yep.
Anything that's going to scare the shit out of you? Yeah, you've mentioned it.
Oh, see that one? Wrestling
I don't know. With crocodiles.
Going back to the adrenaline thing, right? It's too much out of your control that's going to induce that shot of adrenaline, and I want control. I want a process that I can do correctly.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I still feel like you're sitting on that side of. There has to be some adrenaline coming out of that. Like are you just saying I only want this much adrenaline because I've organized that much of the problem? So
I want to get things to a point where I can at least answer to myself in trying it. So an example, a skating example for you is I love the way backsmiths look. I think it's the coolest looking trick, and I have always been absolutely horrendous at them. Every time I try, I slip into backlip. Yeah. And it's unbelievably frustrating. And so, but before, I've also always gravitated towards rail skating, and I very, very much want to backsmith a handrail before I cannot anymore. And I'm aware that like my window is very close to closing. And so I've been practicing backsmiths on park rails, and like my...
Oh, yes. You're doing it at Woodward,
right?
I
practiced a few there, and I've been, like, every time I've been going to the park, I've been trying to get at least one. And my theory is I'm gonna do 100, and then I'm gonna try it on this rail. And at least if I catastrophically fail trying on this handrail, let's say I break my leg, right? Ideally, I don't. I'm not looking forward to doing that. Not. But at least I had an idea. I had a process of how to go about that in my mind, at least, isn't me throwing like reckless abandon to the wind and saying, hey, I'm going to just go do this. I've spent some time with it. I've thought about it. I've put it into like a structure that, hopefully it works. But yeah, like there will probably be some amount of adrenaline on the first try, and there will probably be some sort of release if I get it. But it's to me, like I really like the process of putting that all together and then hopefully seeing a desired outcome. And to me that's different than just, hey, hope this works. And like I've done some of that, but
I don't think. Yeah, but I would say most of the time that you say, I hope this works, it's like with the background knowledge of all the stuff you have in your like catalog of like tricks and like skill level, you know what I mean? There's very few skateboarders that go, you know what, I just learned a kickflip, here goes a 10 stair, or here goes a 5 stair, you know what I mean? Because you're like, you know that's going to hurt way more than that. There's some skaters that might try it, but they're not real skateboarders, because the skateboarders, I think, want that process of like build up. It's like when everyone's asked the question, if you either could have every trick, you don't learn them right now, or you're going to get every trick, but yeah, like it takes you 10 years to get them. I think most skaters that are true skaters go, I want the 10 years. Because I want that, like, I'm getting it, I've made it, I've worked for it, I've made it.
I think that like that's what I enjoy at the end of the day is seeing the work materialize into something that you want. I mean, it's similar with, cliff jumping, for example. If I'm going to try a new thing off of a cliff at a height that could be consequential, I'm going to go through the process of figuring out how to make it such that when I'm standing up there and I'm thinking about all the preparation I've done to try it, I'm not like, I don't know if I'm ready. This is as ready as I'm going to be. You're either going to try it or not. And you're right. Like there is pangs of adrenaline that come with that. But it's different to me than, hey, I know physically I could go do 3 backflips off that right now. Let me just go see if that works out. And there are people who will do that. And it might work. It probably will. But I like the process. So anyway, for the drawing question, I would be very curious how all of those activities, you could call it, fit together under an umbrella of process, or chaotic activities, at least activities that seem chaotic or risky to most folks. How order could be brought to those things. No, I like that.
Don't have order to them. Yeah, I wonder. That's interesting. Yeah, I was thinking, I don't like to give the secrets away, and because not that they're secrets. I usually sketch a bunch after this, and I'll sit in my sketch pad and I'll come up with ideas. So I like to see what sort of comes out of it. My first thought was, when you said cliff diving earlier, was you diving off, but it's like the first one's a flip, then it's holding a skateboard, then it's like a parachute, and then it's like a spreadsheet, but like it's all the tricks going down kind of thing. That was my first thought, but who knows? But it's hard to sort of like, where do you pick? Like, the combination of everything, or do you pick one little piece and you highlight that?
Yeah.
Like, because that was like.
Well, I don't want to.
I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Instruct or impede your process, but I would say, skateboarding for me, in terms of like the array of large life decisions I've made over the years, skateboarding has been a very consistent lens through which to make those decisions. So I think like a lot of where I'm at now and what I've done is all downstream through a decision I've made with skateboarding, kind of at the forefront.
Do you have a photo or something of like that you're like, this is my best photo or this is my best clip that you would like
skateboarding
like to be reimagined? Yeah.
I have a photo. if we're talking about adrenaline or risk, it doesn't make me look great here. I've got a photo that my photographer friend who shot it, was like, man, I wish we had shot this when I knew what I was doing, because he was pretty early on in his photography career then.
Yeah.
Maybe that one would be interesting reimagined.
Yeah,
Yeah.
send it along, like shoot me along, and then I'll see, and like maybe I can incorporate that. I always want people to have something that they're going to enjoy, and sometimes like with skateboarders, like sometimes they make the whole deck and then they get they can get it off like push boards or whatever it is, and they can have. Sometimes they do that. Sometimes it's just a little thing. You and your missus can use the illustrations for whatever you want. So you can even put the
cool.
Skatewise one that I did on a t-shirt or whatever you want. You do you. They're already up. Like I've got them up on that thing, but I'm not gonna.
Well, thank you.
They're yours. You do what you want. So enjoy that life. Yeah, of course. That's all the questions I have for you. Oh, sorry. I'll do one last one. Who's your favorite skateboarder right now?
I really like Brian O'Dwyer's parts lately, mostly because he skates the way that I wish I could, but I cannot.
I feel like I see most skateboarders like that. But like Luan Oliveira, I love the way he skates, like that pop, fast, like the power in it as well. But then you see someone like super technical, like if I could skate like anyone, I think I would skate like Day One, because he just feels like he's got everything, and the creativeness and the willing to be a bit goofy. You know what I mean?
I can only imagine.
God. Just to go like, oh, I want to try this, and there's a realistic chance you could get it. You know? Like, all of us walk down the street and go, oh, how sick would that be? Like a front nose blunt, and then like kick flip out, but like I could manual that piece at the end. And you're like, but he could do that. Like he could think it and do it. So, yeah. Anyway. Thank you so much for being on here, and thanks for letting me soak up your time. I'm excited to get a drawing out to you. It'll be a couple of weeks. There's a few episodes in front of you.
Okie doke. Well, thanks for having me.
We'll be all done.
Yeah, please.
Of course. Thanks
I don't
for
think
letting me take your time.
50th birthday party is going to move on dates, but if it should, come to Woodward.